Sometimes even your favorite game can have stuff in it that just grind your gears, right? Things that shock you when you realize that a group of people sat down, thought about it, and decided, yeah, this is fine. Even bringing this up probably already has you thinking of a few things. Our precious Final Fantasy XIV is no exception to the rule, and is riddled with things big and small that really have baffled me when I realize how they just haven't and don't feel likely to change. And that's why my first decree as Mr. Know-It-All is that I'm removing bunny boys from the game. Get them out of here. No, but for real, even if we know these things will never change, let's just take some catharsis and venting about them for a little bit, shall we? First of all, the gearing system in this game can be so goddamn brutal. How it works is, when a new raid tier drops, you can complete the raid and get gear from it once per week. Usually for a savage, there's about 2 chests that contain gear, but that means competing with 7 other people for the gear. If you have a static and you play a DPS class, fantastic. You're probably going to get fed gear first and feel accomplished relatively quickly, but if you're any other role, or god forbid, a poor soul like me who PFs most things, you genuinely have to wait weeks or months in order to obtain the gear that you need. If you get nothing, you still get a book every week that, with enough of them, can be traded in for gear, but it's such an unsatisfactory feeling to walk up to a vendor after 2 months of collecting books to get 1 piece of gear. I really don't want to have to complete the same raids every week endlessly in order to get gear. Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that the current system needs to go entirely. First few months, sure, keep things just as they are. I'm fine with suffering for a little while in the gear department because I'll likely be having fun progging, clearing and cleaning up the fights anyway, but after a while I shouldn't be having to wait potentially 16 weeks to get best in slot. For a game that allows so much freedom of expression with classes you can play, it just doesn't make sense to me that if I want best in slot for something other than my main class, I'm gonna have to be suffering for months on end. As of writing the script, I want to play Machinist, so I need best in slot, but I'm sitting on 11 P8S books, meaning I'd need 5 more to be able to buy both the body and the gun. 5 more weeks of reclears just to be able to play a class that I want to practice and learn better. This just ain't it, chief. My solution? Like I said, I think the current system works fine for a time period. Give people enough time to raid consistently and gear up their main class and make it that bit of a grind. But after a major patch, or maybe a little bit after, let's increase the chest amount to say 3, or double the books given per run. Give me an incentive to do reclears knowing that I'm making a noticeable jump towards best in slot. I only really play melee DPS right now, but if I could just get best in slot for other things quicker, I know I'd be much more incentivized to switch it up and learn new things. And in the pursuit of mastery of those new things, I'd likely end up playing more. I can't see it as anything but a win-win. And just as a side note, because I won't turn this into its own point, can I please have a way to spend my copium totems, as I like to call them? Seriously, give me ultimate weapons for the newer classes and older ultimates. You can't convince me that it's a colossal task to reskin some pre-existing models for things like Reaper and Gunbreaker and throw them into the vendors. We already have the Radiant weapons that are dragon themed that would be so perfect for you, Cobb. Come on. Now, the low-hanging fruit here would be to just talk about the overall glamour system, and while I do agree that we should have a better overall glamour system, I want to focus on something a little more specific. It's always cool to get a new dungeon on a patch. Even if it isn't the most challenging content, it's always fun to run through for the first time, maybe get slapped around by those bosses a few times, and just enjoy the story. But you know what absolutely sucks the life right through my orifices? Seeing that the gear not only sucks, but it isn't even dyeable. For real? This is the best we're getting? The fact that a brand new dungeon, released in Endwalker, can have gear that is so goddamn disappointing is unbelievable to me. The dungeon is cool, the bosses are fun, so why the hell would I ever want to go back in here more than once when my best reward is gear that has existed for the better part of a decade without even having upscaled textures that isn't even dyeable? And I'm saying this as someone who did have to farm this goddamn dungeon many times to get the best in slot for DSR. If we're gonna get recycled gear, can we at least have it be dyeable? Where is my dyeable Pagothan gear? Why does some gear get the dye treatment and others just don't? It doesn't make sense to me. But I'm not done yet. Oh no. Here's my worst offenders of the diabolical situation. You get it? Diabolical? The new PvP reward gear is absolutely incredible. Like many sets, they've been knocking it out of the park lately. But what is that? The Abyssos gear for classes like Reaper are even worse. Why does it just die like this? Does it not defeat the purpose of dyeing the gear altogether when it just looks undoubtedly worse no matter what color you use? It's just so unfulfilling to earn great gear and know that it dies horribly. Does Square Enix not have some guy who's just willing to turn around and say, lads, it's fucked, we need to fix this? It's one of the things that worries me as we move towards higher detailed gear and better base models. How many of them just don't die well at all? For a game so heavily based around collecting glamour for your character, I don't think this should be overlooked. The last point I want to talk about is what I like to call the guild problem. One of the core concepts in almost any MMO that I can think of is the gold, the money, and the economy. Admittedly, I'm not the most experienced MMO player going, so maybe Final Fantasy isn't alone in this, but I feel like my guild is mostly worthless. Again, I realize that most people would probably talk about housing here, but we all know how dreadful the lottery is and how housing can be a guild sync, but how is it going to work as a guild sync if you can't even get a house in the first place? We have had the addition of the mounts that you can buy for a pretty big amount of gil as an attempt to act as a gil sync, and I've ended up spending a lot of gil on other things like foods, pots, and pentameldin for raiding, but still, at the end of the day, that just feels like a means to an end rather than getting me excited about earning and spending gil. For example, have you ever played RuneScape? If you have, great, you'll understand me instantly. If not, just bear with me for a minute. RuneScape's economy is one of the funnest aspects of the game. A large amount of the best in slot weapons and armor, food, potions, anything worth a damn can be bought and sold between players. Like, imagine if you could repeat Savage Raids endlessly, but the drop chances of gear were a lot lower, but the gear was tradable. How expensive would a weapon coffer be if it was actually a rare drop? RuneScape made getting rare drops, selling them for a large amount of gold, and buying the things you actually needed a super exciting game loop. Before you think that my suggestion is just to rework the entire gear system, not at all. I just wanted to illustrate a tiny bit on how having more things to do with gold in game is generally a funner experience. I do think Final Fantasy would need its own brand of gold slinging, so here's my suggestion. As a Reaper main, you know what pains me so much? That even as a shared Maimon class, I can't wear that beautiful Dragoon armor. Class exclusive gear is the bane of my existence. I know that class identity is a big part of the game, but I also want to just be able to wear whatever cool goddamn gear I want. So here's just one wacky idea. What if there was an item that let you transform any piece of gear into a level 1 0 stat armor? Literally just for glamour purposes. Maybe a 5 mil a pop glamour prism that you could buy from some vendor, screw it, make it 10 mil, whatever, but something that just let you pick one of those absolute favorite pieces of gear you have and make it so you can wear them anywhere. I do get that some people probably wouldn't like people running around in class specific gear, so I won't say that I'd die on the hill of that idea, but genuinely, what would you like to see as a proper guild sync in the game? I don't really know. Something that isn't just recolored mounts, just let me know in the comments. With all that said, I definitely think Yoshi P and the team are acutely aware of many of the issues the game has, and I trust in them to continue to improve the game in every department. I know that some of these things will probably forever just be pipe dreams, but a man can dream, can't he? When the worst things you can complain about are just not having enough things to spend gil on and some gear not dying well, I guess it isn't too bad anyway. I'll catch you guys next time.